everybody, it's Debbie Skyrme. I'm Celebrant Spain, and I'm in a little village called La Herradura, which is on the Costa Tropical. Now, the Costa Tropical is a lesser known part of Spain's southern coast, and it's an hour from Granada and an hour from Malaga. And somebody who can tell us an awful lot more about this part of the world, who has an awful lot of experience, is, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, aren't I? Renate van Nijen, is that right?
Very, very close, very close.
Oh, Renate, please introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Renate van Nijen and I'm Dutch, but I've been living in Spain since 2003. Now, I came not immediately to La Herradura, where I live and Debbie also lives. I came with an English partner. We did say goodbye to each other, but I came here with an English partner and we started in Logroño, then we moved down to the south and first lived in quite a few places, like many people do here. You move like 10 times in 2 or 3 years. Lived inland near Lake Venezuela and Torrox, and ended up, I particularly fell in love with the Herradura the first time I came here. Because it has some energy, and people actually say it's like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. And I do know my brother, when he visits, he always goes to stay in Nerja because he doesn't really like it. So, which is quite peculiar, but I love it, and many with me. And I'm an artist and a writer. I've been an artist for 35 years, a bit more professionally. Been in the whole circuit in galleries in the Netherlands, also in Italy. I lived for 5 years in Italy, and I've also participated in joint exhibitions, also in Rome and in Paris and in Amsterdam. I have also solo exhibition. Anyway, I've been around the block, so professional artist. But since I'm in Spain, I've also started writing seriously. I always loved writing, but I started writing books seriously. And I've actually published 8 books now. So I self-publish, which in these days a lot of writers choose to do. And I've published 8 books, but during the lockdown, I actually wrote 2 new books, and I revised another book. And I'd like to. I mean, if you want to get to know me, you can find me on the umbrella name Renartsworld, which is REN for Renate, and then Arts, Renarts with an S, World. Because that's my umbrella name, because I sell my art on products in some platforms like Redbubble and Renartsworld Fashion. And I have my own website where you can actually find everything and the links to everything. So I'm just...
Don't worry about the links, because I'll pop all those into the group and into the comments, and everybody can see how to connect with you. So that's no problem. Now, I first heard about you when I came to La Herradura, and I saw your book about La Herradura all over the place, and I actually started flicking through it. I was in Keng's, which is a Thai takeaway, and he had a copy, and I started flicking through it as I was waiting, and I got hooked immediately. And then I came up to your avocado farm for a tour around the avocado farm, which was fascinating. And then I was able to purchase a copy directly from you. And then I saw all the other things that you did. And then I began to get to know your art. And I was in a mutual friend's house, and they were showing me around the house. And I went into the bedroom, and they got a piece of art either side of the bed. And I said, oh, that's a Renate, isn't it? And actually it wasn't. They'd learnt to paint from you. So you're teaching painting classes as well, aren't you? So you're now sharing the love, sharing your experience in that way too.
Yeah. I've discovered I love teaching, and I've started teaching in 2006 here in Spain. And I found I really like it. And the way I teach is that particular house where you were, they're close friends of mine, and they did a workshop with 2 other couples. and I let them copy one of my paintings. That's why it looks like one of my paintings, because it's a copy. And I do that a lot because I feel then I can see, also in my ongoing art classes, then I can see how good someone is, or how, what their weak points are, what their strengths are. It's also suitable for beginners, my classes. And yeah, I just love teaching. And also I've started giving teen art classes here in my studio. And of course, because of COVID, I now offer everything online. So that's a very new kind of experience for me.
Yeah.
I actually didn't think it would work, and someone convinced me from a specific group in the UK that I'm part of called the Silver Tent, and they said, why don't you try it, just have a trial run with a small group, which I did, and they all loved it, and it really worked. And this is one to stay, I think, even after, because the beautiful thing is you can have people, and I have an art class on Saturday morning, which is only female and over 50. It's just grown like that. But you can join if you like. But it's really nice because you're still in a group, and they interact together. So they talk with each other because it's via Zoom, and it's really powerful, and they like it. I've got some really good feedback. So, and I love it. I love helping people to find their style, because everybody has, and everybody can paint. That's my conviction after all these years.
You're so passionate about everything that you do. That one thing that really shines through.
Oh, thank you.
And
yeah.
you mentioned that you're such a well-traveled lady. Now, there are a lot of well-traveled people in La Herradura. It's a place that kind of draws the world schooling community in particular, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very, very special place. There's a very eclectic mix of people here. And I don't think, other than the Spanish, because it's very much a Spanish village, there is no one dominant nationality. Whereas you go to Nerja, perhaps, and there's more of perhaps an English population. But here in Herradura, there's a real mix of nationalities. It's wonderful. Yeah. And you've been teaching some of the world schoolers as well, haven't you? You mentioned your teen classes.
Yeah, this is why, well, how I got into teen classes, because I personally, I love teaching, but I also like teaching. So I'm not the person for small children, doing art with small children. There's other people who can perfectly well do that, even in the village. That's not me. I like to teach. I like to help people to develop, and to, if they already have a bit of a passion, to learn more and to find their style. That's the way I'd like to teach, and to encourage them. And it came to me, these teen arts from World Schooling Community, and I loved it. And what was so beautiful to see, they were learning from each other, because it's called peer learning, I presume. I'll give you an example, which I think we already talked about this, but there was a girl from Australia, because these kids come from all over the world, and she said, oh, my granny was a suffragette. And the other kid said, so what's a suffragette? And so she explained. So this is really powerful peer learning. And this is also what I'd like to, this is why I so would love to have a teen art class online with kids from all over the world, that they can work safe from their own environment, but they can get to know all these teens from and cultures, because they can talk, they can interact, and I would guide that as well, of course. And yeah, but I loved it, and they were very enthusiastic, and yeah, some of them said they really well developed, and it was quite special. And of course it stopped because of COVID.
You're a marvelous facilitator. You're very good at connecting.
Well, yeah, I like that. Well, I like to I'm not one of those artists. I just tell all my little secrets. And to be honest, I love it. There's a lady in the UK, and she's churning them out like unbelievable. She does so many paintings, and she gets better and better, and they are beautiful. And her name's Pam French. I'd just love to give her name. And she continues to say, if it wasn't for you, she came to my class like 10 years ago, I think, or a long time ago, here in La Herradura, and she loved, and I gave her some tricks, and she says, I still use them, and I love that, and she's doing really well, and why not? I like that. So yeah, I am passionate about that.
What a marvelous testimonial.
Yes.
And there's something that keeps drawing me back to you, because there was recently an online competition to win one of your books, and it was all about, the question was about flamenco and the history of flamenco. And of course, here in Ouridor, we have a lot of associations with flamenco.
Yeah.
And I was one of a few people actually that answered correctly that it's believed that flamenco originates from India. And I won your book, didn't I? So I won a Tapas of Tales. And I've been reading this, and this is fascinating. And one of my favourite chapters is the one about, I think it's about your mum, isn't it? From euthanasia to butterflies. Now, I'm a celebrant, and I have officiated many funeral ceremonies, and I'm not at all worried about the conversation of death and dying.
No.
So to read that chapter was wonderful. It's a great conversation opener, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And of course, in Holland, it's legal. And I know there's people who also in the UK, because I'm because of my ex-English partner, I'm watching more English TV and documentaries and stuff than Dutch, to be honest. So I'm more in contact with that kind of side of the world. Yeah, my mother, she had ALS. And that's a horrible disease, and you'll just die choking. And so it started with her hands, and she couldn't use her hands anymore. The world was like this. And then she got problems speaking. She couldn't speak anymore. She was just, well, she couldn't really speak, but her mind was fine. And of course, she opted for euthanasia. And the process is you'd be thoroughly checked. And my brother and I, which was a bit bizarre, we had to sign that we agreed because that we were happy for her to have euthanasia. So it's not something that is just done, oh yeah, you have a bad mood, you get euthanasia. It's not like that. And so 2 different doctors and the house doctors came to check her out, and they all agreed, this is a horrible disease, there's no way out, she will die in a couple of years. She's had enough. And in a way, it was bizarre and beautiful at the same time. And that might sound a bit weird, but knowing when you are dying, you get these really literate, weird things. And I was the one who arranged it all. I was in a really, I must maybe say what really helps me. I believe there's more after life, and that totally helps me. So I don't see death as something horrible. I see a horrible death as something horrible. We all have to die, but there's ways of dying, and euthanasia is actually a really peaceful, beautiful way of dying, to be honest, in my view. But anyway, there were things like, we went to the funeral guy, and he said, are you sure she's going to go through with it? Because not many people do, because you have to be super strong, because we are humans. We have this instinct to survive. So many people who, like in Holland, if they maybe get cancer, they say, yeah, I want euthanasia, but then last moment they're too scared. And so my mother was a really strong woman, actually. She was also really special. She looked more like an artist than I am. Weird hair, always dressed funny. She was very special, but yeah, she had euthanasia, and it was kind of beautiful. The day before it happened, she got a shunt in her hand. I'm just explaining it all now. Shunt in her hand, and then a day later, the doctor came, and she had orchestrated it all, very loud music, classical music. And my father, my brother, and I, we held her when she passed on. Well, I don't know, but I'd opt for that way of dying, to be honest. It's beautiful.
What a huge privilege to be a part of that journey. And Renate, thank you for talking to me so openly about it. Now, there's another topic that you talk about, and it's a conversation that people find difficult, and that's talking about somebody who has problems with alcohol, alcohol dependence. And you've written a whole book about that, haven't you, and the experience of living with somebody who has an alcohol dependency.
Yeah, do I have it here? Yeah, I should have it here. Now I don't see it. Yes, I do. I actually wrote this book first in 2011. And this was the book, and this is now the book because I revised it, because some things changed. But what the reason was, I came to Spain with my ex-partner who was an alcoholic. He was a functioning alcoholic. So he had a job. He was the best teacher ever and the best proofreader, because I did translations to survive also as an artist. It's not always that easy. And I translated from Dutch to English. He was the best proofreader, and he even proofread this book, which made it, this is a long story because we were together for 6 years living together. It was beautiful when he wasn't drinking. It was hell when he was drinking. And he was still a very beautiful soul, I felt. And it was not that easy. And people would tell me, why don't you leave him? He's just a jerk, and just let him go. And they didn't understand why I couldn't, why it was so hard. And it took me 6 years to actually split up, and we started living separately. But we stayed friends, very close friends, for another 6 years, and working together. And he messed up his life quite often, because when he had holidays or days off, that was it, then he lost it. But he then also often lost his job, and then he slept on the couch again. So he was in my life for a long time. And then I once gave him an ultimatum and said, you have to go. And this was in La Herradura, and he lived on the beach for a month. And it was heartbreaking, because I was walking our dog, and our dog always found him and always happy. And then he would say things to me, well, you let a dog, you wouldn't kick a dog out, you kick me out. But I knew you have to, if you give an ultimatum, you have to stick to it. It was summer. He had a car, so he could have all his stuff in the car. He showered on the beach, swam in the sea, went to have a coffee and shaved. So he didn't look like a lost soul, but he was. But then he did decide to go to Al-Anon, and he became sober for 9 months. And this was all in the period that I just finished my book, and he helped me. He was at the launch, and it was quite fantastic. But in the end, he did fall back again, and this is when he went back to the UK, and we decided to stop, because it was too toxic for both of us in a way, because he did love me and I loved him, to be honest, a lot. But it just didn't work. And I married a Spanish avocado farmer 6 years ago. So, however, the book was even used by the British government as a testimonial in 2011. It's still on the parliamentary website if you type in my name. And the book, actually, for the book, I interviewed people, because this is not my story. And I wrote it, to be honest, for people who live with an alcoholic. That was my thought in mind. And I was frustrated that people talk to me like, oh, let the loser go. And I talk to other people, because I talk to people. Most people don't, they're ashamed. But I'm someone who talks quite easily, as you can notice. But I talked about it to get rid of it. So I found out that this is a huge problem. And actually later I discovered that 3 in 5 people will be affected by an alcoholic at some point in their life. And one alcoholic affects at least between 6 and 10 people negatively. So that's huge. And my frustration was, also in the UK, but in Holland, everywhere, the focus is on the alcoholic always. And they say it's a huge burden on NHS in the UK. But to be honest, the people who live with an alcoholic, and they don't tell their doctors, but they have huge problems, health problems, because of stress. They wouldn't say, yeah, my partner is an alcoholic. And by the way, just as many men as women. In my book, there's a lot of women who were alcoholics. And so it is a huge problem, which is ignored by society. And it's a difficult problem, because I do drink. I have a glass of wine every now and then. I don't drink a lot, but I love a glass of wine. So I'm not against drinking, but I am against showing ads that say, oh, if you're drinking, you're happy and you're beautiful and you're young and everything's good. I'm against that.
Yeah.
And I do think people should be more aware that if people do have the problem, don't ever say to someone who says, no, I don't want to drink. Don't say, oh, don't be a bore. Oh, don't be such a beat. Oh, one won't hurt you. Don't do that, because can be devastating for someone, because it's not for nothing that, in my view, that it's called Alcohol Anonymous, which people go to help, which is a shame in a way, because why should we be ashamed to have this problem? Because it's in all layers of society. It's not just a guy lying in the street. It's everywhere. People in high jobs. It's everywhere. It's a huge problem. And actually, I also found out through my book, because I interviewed people throughout Europe, in Norway, Germany, England, Spain, of course, Holland, And I interviewed children, partners of alcoholics, parents of alcoholics, people who work with alcoholics, alcoholics themselves. And in the book, there's some information about how can you recognize one, how can you recognize if someone goes into a delirium, what you should do, what you shouldn't. So but it's a reading book. It's not a scientific book. It's stories, because with the permission of all these people, they all gave permission to put their story in the book anonymously. Every story tells their story, a moment in their life, in the first person most of the time. And there's some really, wow, there's so many stories that touch me, but one, for example, was a woman who went into menopause. She was a mother of, now I don't remember whether it's 5 or 6 children, but that doesn't really matter. She had quite a few children. She was a school teacher, wonderful woman, capable of doing everything. And then she got menopausal, and she started hearing voices. She got schizophrenic, really. But in those years, this was in the 60s, I presume 60s, they didn't really know what was happening to her. And then the doctor told her, I'm telling you a short version now, the doctor told her, just have a glass of sherry and cigarettes. And she became an alcoholic. And my argument is probably that we all have the tendency of being addicted. I certainly can have addictive tendencies with food. I mean, food can be comforting and it can be something to celebrate. And it's a difficult one to get away from. But yeah, alcohol is, of course, quite devastating because it changes your brain. And there's more addictions, of course, as we all know. And these days it's the telephone that we can see all around us. I mean, it's not addiction. I mean, it's you can judge people who are alcoholics, but look at yourself. Maybe you're addicted to something as well. I mean, so I think what I'm saying is I'd like people to not judge and to understand, try and understand why someone is in that situation, because often they don't know. And yeah, I am very still passionate about it, even though that's not part of my life anymore. But
I can tell.
Yeah, and when people read the book, I've had good feedback. When people read the book, they what happens is they say, oh God, I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. Because you think when you live with an alcoholic, they what I call one of the symptoms of an alcoholic is to blame the partner or the parent, or well, you're useless. And mine was very clever. He was a very intelligent man. So he said things, oh, you call yourself an artist, or you call yourself a writer, you're rubbish. And that hurt me most. So he wouldn't say nasty words to me, but that really...
Yes, it diminishes you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and they would say things, you're useless, you're not, nobody wants you, but it's projection, really. But it's something they all do. They all do it. It's quite amazing to see that, in a way, or interesting, I should say.
I 100% recommend your books, and I recommend that people reach out to you and buy them.
Oh, thank
you. Are an amazing storyteller. We can tell just by chatting online today what a great storyteller you are, but that transfers into your writing most beautifully. And of course, your artist work and your teaching as well. So I could talk to you for ages. So perhaps we should do this again. Perhaps we should have another chat sometime soon.
Open for that. It's lovely. and again, yeah,
it would be lovely. It'd be great if perhaps you could have a video sometime and you can show me around some of your works that you've painted, and perhaps you could do a little class or something. That would be lovely.
That would be fine. I'll do that.
That would be great. Okay.
Yeah.
So Renata, thank you so much. I'm gonna wind this up now because we could actually talk forever.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. So just to remind everybody that Renata and I were both in Extremadura, which is on the Costa Tropical. I'm Debbie Skyrme. I'm Celebrant Spain because I am a celebrant here in Spain, and my website is celebrantspain.es, and I'm on social media as Celebrant Spain. I'm going to put Renata's details into the comments so that you can find her easily. She's on a couple of different platforms, so it might be depending whether you want to go and have a look at her work as an artist or to buy one of her books, but I'll put all the details into the comments below. So Renata, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor.